Welcome to the digital studio, Building Bridges, Infrastructure as the Geopolitical Glue. I am Anahit Pilibosian from the Applied Policy Research Institute of Armenia, and I'm delighted to moderate the conversation with Eric Solheim, former Under-Secretary General of the United Nations, Executive Director of the UN Environment Programme, and co-chair of the Europe-Asia Center. Today, we want to think about infrastructure as a conduit for peace, stability, and collaboration, rather than putting walls between us and turning into divisive forces of value creation. So Eric, how can infrastructure partnerships serve as a tool for geopolitical reconciliation, and where have you seen this applied?
I think there is no doubt that the biggest infrastructure program in our time is the Chinese Belt and Road program. 150 nations, all developing nations in the world except India, are partners in Belt and Road. And we have seen some amazing development, for example, the Mombasa-Nairobi Railroad in Kenya, Djibouti to Addis Ababa at Africa, Horn of Africa, Bandung to Jakarta in Indonesia, Laos to China railroads, or the Padma Bridge in Bangladesh, which has increased the GDP of Bangladesh with 1%, just that bridge. So you have seen many of these very, very good and now also very green infrastructure projects. The West, unfortunately, has not been able to pull off the same. There have been some criticisms from the West as to what China is doing. That should simply stop. If the West have some complaints, they should just do better. If there's not one African nation which will not welcome better European or American investment. They want to have investment from both China and Europe and America and from everyone else. So let's look into also how we can partner and make some of these programs even wider and then more effective.
I see. And what lessons have you observed that one can draw from past infrastructure projects that aimed at reconnecting divided regions? What can we learn from these lessons today?
If you ask me what is the most important, I believe it's a people-centered approach. Because look, if you want to make a railroad or a road, it will always have impact upon some people. If you have a huge hydroelectrical plant, maybe some people will have to move. There are negatives for individuals or for local communities, even if it's very, very good for society at large. That, of course, was exactly the same when Europe or America developed its infrastructure. It had impact on people. You need a people-centered approach, meaning discussing with the people, amending according to local people's wishes, and making sure that some of the windfalls and benefits are with the local people. That's particularly important if they're indigenous group, but even if there's not, if there's normal population in any nation, speaking to them, negotiating with them, and making sure they benefit. This is essential because otherwise there will be opposition, there will be protest, and it will slow down everything. But also the fairness of a program, it should benefit everyone, not just the nation at large, not humanity at large, but also those people who are most directly involved.
Interesting. So inclusivity is important, and actually, I would like to share an opposite case study in my region and ask you a question. So you may have heard of the Black Sea submarine cable project, which has been portrayed as the new underwater electric project through the Black Sea, connecting the South Caucasus region, where I'm from. The South Caucasus is made of Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia, to the European Union. Armenia was part of the preparatory talks, but when the initial MOU was signed in December 2022 between Azerbaijan, Hungary, Romania, and Georgia in the presence of the European Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen, Armenia was not invited to sign the Memorandum of Understanding. So I wanted to bring this example of exclusion in an infrastructure project to really highlight that it can be not a glue, but a fracture. And so what can we do to actually prevent projects from becoming exclusionary?
No, as much as I said, you need to be people-centered. You also, of course, need to include all nations which can be impacted upon a program. and have a conversation with them and make sure that there are windfalls of benefits for everyone. Otherwise, again, you will get confrontation and conflicts, and that normally makes it slower, and added it may have negative side effects. But this applies even in small issues. I mean, I was Minister of Environment back home in Norway. If we wanted to set up a national park, sometimes the bureaucrats told me, just do it. And I thought, no, let's speak to the farmers in the area. There's no way I can protect a national park by police and the army. You need a buy-in from the local people. Even if in some cases you need to change something to make it to the taste of the local people, in the long run it is much stronger, because if the local people support a national park or a road or a railroad, well, it's much stronger than if you have a lot of discontent and negatives with the local people.
Well, in our case, you know, the local people of Armenia would like it, but the parties are excluding it quite deliberately, and that's the problem we have. So the flip side of interconnectedness is, I would say, dependencies. And I believe this is one of the lessons that Europe drew from COVID, when supply chains were very globalized and stopped. And also this was reinforced as one of the lessons of the war in Ukraine, which propelled to redraw trade routes from east to west. So I wanted to ask you, where do you think Europe is going in terms of trade and infrastructure? And do you think it's the right strategy?
First of all, I mean, interconnectivity or connections are absolutely central for human life. There is a Chinese old saying which says, if you want to fight poverty, you start with building a road. Because if people are not connected to the market or to other people, they will normally remain in poverty. So infrastructure is very central. The problem we are facing in Europe, I believe, is that making infrastructure is now so slow. The permission process for any hydro dam or any solar project or any new railroad takes so long, it slows us down very much, and if it's very slow, also becomes much more costly, because time is also cost. So we need to look into the procedures for permissions so that they are not over bureaucratic and slow. Of course, there should be an environment assessment of a new railroad or a new solar plant, but that should be done in parallel, should not slow down. If you have experience from other parts of the world or other parts of that nation that there is no significant negative impact, well, you may do it faster. But all over Europe, it takes many years. Back home in Norway, from you start planning a new housing project, it takes maybe 8 years until the buildings are there. That makes it very costly, very slow, right. And people are frustrated. So making the bureaucracy working more efficient, I think, is the most important issue in Europe.
I see. All right, and I am almost at the end of my questions, and I will ask you, actually, if you had a magic wand, what would you change to make infrastructure projects more effective? And you cannot say making them more people-centric.
It's the bureaucracy, because if there is a lot of red tape, it will be very slow and no one will do it. So make the bureaucracy efficient and get it done. And there is a very beautiful slogan made, not by any politician, but by Nike, just do it.
Just do it. Well, with that, thank you very much, Eric, for joining us at this digital studio. And there's a lot of food for thought, and we hope to continue the conversation another time.